Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of College for YouTube. This is part 4 of my read-along of The Dark Shadows Daybook, written by Patrick McCray, who I just did an interview with. I want to, again, thank him so much for giving me his time. So here I go, guys. This is where I'm at. Episode 281. When a seance brings Josette to the present, in Vicky's body, to whom will Barnabas propose? Roger Collins, Lewis Edmonds. Vicky, possessed by Josette, narrates her last moments on Earth until Barnabas stops her. Later, Barnabas hears Vicky speak of her love of the past and presents her with the music box. Roger Collins walks away with this one, but who is Roger? I'm not sure he ever is quiet, as I don't know Roger as he is in this one. It's as if a real guy were raised by Quentin's nephew in an intensely haunted house. Intensely. Surviving a murder rap, a fire demon ex, a tempted patricide, and a hard-drinking nymphomaniacal niece who never quite got the memo. As if the writers heard about this real guy and based a character on him. And for one episode, he got to write all of his own dialogue. Every aphorism is a gem. His giddy over the costume party, oblivious to the terror and suffering to be endured by the employee forced to attend it. In other words, he's a great guy, and I wish the writers had featured that Roger Collins more. Or that Roger Moore Collins. I love the Bond reference. One of the other, but like the great thespian of the English screen might have done, Lewis Edmonds dominates the episode. This is despite his minimal screen time. Roger has a marvelously fresh sense of aristocrat defiance in the drawing room scene, and the rarity of seeing a Collins enjoying himself is too much to ignore. Edmonds knows he has a killer scene designed to make him look like $1 million. He's a team player. Lewis, he could outact a number of his fellow performers, but he shows Louisiana good manners to not do so. However, in this case, the thoroughbred simply needs to gallop at full speed. Roger aside, we're cementing the mechanics of the seance here. I suspect the staff is well aware that the 1795 finery seances and Vicky in peril are their next servings of bread and butter. While that's months away, the long game strategy of Team Shadows allows them to get audiences so accustomed to it that when it appears, it feels natural. I'm amazed that everyone time travels without a seance. The costumes feel right on the actors because they've been training us. Like we were all rats in Dan Curtis's insane maze. My God, we've got to get back to the ship. Don't you understand? It's a zoo with a cookbook. Which episode is this? Shit! Hocus Pocus and Frisbee. You gotta be kidding me. Need a better agent. Back to reality. The show is also straining barely successfully with shoehorning Vicky in as Josette. But it can't do it. Well, because she's not. But Maggie's in the nut house, and Barnabas is looking for reasons to. I'm scary. Sorry. I'm scary from Dr. Hoffman's bedroom. I'm scary from Dr. Hoffman's bedroom. When she puts on the Sergio Mendes album, opens up Whitman's sampler, and starts dubbing Capri behind her ears. So someone has to be Josette. I guess it could have been Dana Elker, but I think he's off the show by now. Vicky is awkwardly attracted to the past, and the seance features a performance that is suggestive of something else. As Mulkey rhythmically pants, moans, and says faster, a lot I expect the camera to pan over to Rob Reiner's mom, telling Willie, I'll have what she's having. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God, I love it. That's good. When Harry met Sally. One of the many original elements to Barnabas Collins is the terror he suffers. He may take far more than he dishes out. Not only is he a deeply tragic man out of time, he's also haunted by two ghosts. But one appears to everyone other than Barnabas, and she's the one who'd give him solace. He's in love with the other ghosts, but she spends all her time possessing people and trying to outrun him in episode 281. He's confronted by both. What's Josette's game? Perhaps Josette is the force that drags Vicky through time. Perhaps it's the only way she can warn her about Barnabas. Unless she's not trying to warn anyone about Barnabas. If I were Josette, I'd be warning people about Angelique. And if Barnabas would just let her finish a simple possession, maybe she would. Episode 300. As Burke increases the pressure on Vicky, she must decide between the duties of a new wife or her loyalty to Collinwood. Can Barnabas seduce her with a third alternative? Burke. Anthony George. Barnabas orders Willie to spy on Vicky and Burke as closely as possible. Later, Julia reports to Barnabas that his cure is coming along. She accuses him of being in Vicky's room. Barnabas admits to temptation, but nothing happened. Julia emphasizes that there must be no next time. He choffers at taking orders. He choffs at her. Neither Julia nor he can afford the questions. He agrees to stay away from Vicky. Later in the garden, Burke reveals that he's buying Seaview for Vicky, and then asks her to marry him. She loves him, but is torn. She'd have to leave the Collins family. She needs time to think. Meanwhile, Willie sees all. He and Barnabas meet at the old house, and he reports the proposal. Barnabas vows there will be no marriage. Burke Devlin must die. Damn. When we think of social issues on fantasy TV of the 60s, the conversation begins, excluding a few months of 1959 with Twilight Zone and then with Star Trek. Dark Shadows addresses political circumstances, too. Give me 1 second. Political circumstances, where was I? Oh, yes. But in the case of episode 300, it is with the fear of and shackles of baffling tradition. In Star Trek, differences are celebrated. In Dark Shadows, they are often unintentionally seen as challenges to be hidden and overcome. If you examine Dark Shadows politically, it has moments that are shockingly conservative for genre television. However, Dark Shadows was not really genre television. I mean it. It was a soap opera, aired in the late afternoon for housewives designed to sell canned hams and pantyhose. That makes the subversive moments enjoyed by the show even craftier. Number 300 is not subversive, but it is sadly revealing of the error. There's a lot we take for granted now. Even I am bewildered by the 60s attitude regarding Vicky and Burke. Really? Vicky's marriage would necessitate her leaving her job at Collinwood. The assumption is that she immediately supposed to become a baby factory for Burke, for a show filled with strong women. It is all smoke and mirrors under this core ethos. Because it's taken for granted, I'm sure women from the time would affirm that it's an accurate portrait, and that makes the decision by several of the show's actresses to remain child-free even more remarkable. Just as significant is the conversation that Barnabas and Julia have about what life will be like when he's normal. Man with no secrets, someone who can love like a normal man. Okay, New York, the 60s, the theatrical arts, a haven for confirmed bachelors. Wallace and I have written about homosexuality in and around Dark Shadows before its separate essays, secret identities living in various closets. The family can never know, tortured yet compulsed. If you see their true form, you're horrified. Vampirism is a razor-edged metaphor for the pitfalls and power of closed gay life in the 1960s. Metaphorically, the secret of the Collins isn't the same. Of them are monsters. Episode 311. When Barnabas, Willie, and David all trap themselves in the secret room of the mausoleum while hunting for Sarah, who gets dibs on the coffin? Willie, John Carlin. David, searching for Sarah, locks himself in the secret vault of the mausoleum. When Barnabas and Willie also look for Sarah, David hides in Barnabas' coffin. From within, he hears Barnabas abuse Willie and wax repositics in Sarah. Later, Vicky sees consolation over David's disappearance. Barnabas, given his shoulder to cry on, rears back to bite her. It's a little too slow and a little too sweet, right up until, okay, there it is, at the end, because he spends so much of the series as the troubled hero. It can be jarring to go back and see Barnabas as a villain, who enjoys being such. Under what circumstances would someone do that? Yes, Dark Shadows is fiction, and so none of these characters have an obligation to be plausible. But it's good fiction, and that demands more scrutiny, of course. Of course, these authors had no idea where they were going when they wrote the show. There was no master plan running up through April of 1795. 1771. 1971. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I kept listening up that year. That doesn't change the fact that this is complete text that begins, expands, and ends. The fact that Barnabas evolves and even contradicts himself, makes him all the more human and dynamic. I'm not sure that a pre planned series could have captured human complexities quite as well. We're too complicated for that. At this point in Barnabas's journey, every institution from the 1795 world has failed him. Marriage, law, science, friendship, even family. With Joshua's inability to stake him, Barnabas learns that his fate is a product of extennialism more than enlightenment. Trapped in a coffin for nearly 200 years, reduced to living in the rat trap echo of his beloved home, with a thieving redneck as his only tie to reality. What did he have to live for? The dead Renner for his fiancée turns out to be a mentally fragile tavern wench. Yes, Barnabas likes serving girls, but Angelique set a certain standard. No, not mentally stable, but a damn fine conversationalist, I imagine. And then there was the time he gave Maggie a psychotic break, so that that effort fails and plunges him into guilt, regret, and eventually white-hot paranoia. The next person to find his secret, Julia Hoffman, is playing the ultimate game of FMK. If you know, Fuck, Marry, Kill with him. I like that. He sure is. And the only thing unclear is the order. As far as he knows, with each injection, he's an undead man walking. In the depths of his alienation comes the one thing that never failed him in 1795. His sister. As the memory of 1795 continues to rot into vinegar, and as the reality of 1967 is even more disheartening, it's natural that Barnabas would respond to the only unallowed happiness in his memory. Is she there to comfort him or chastise him? He knows it's the latter, but people crave limits, and he respects the source. If he is evil, it's a dependent shopping spree of choice. And it's not that his choice doesn't reign with consequence. The rueful truth is that all of his choices reign with consequence. He can't chuckle at Nancy and Sluggo without it leading to the most terrifying night of his life. Listen to the opening narrations of the show. How often are these people plunged into terrors they never knew possible? Constantly, every night. So yes, Vicky is despondent over a missing David. Sure, why not use this as an opportunity to console her at the end, as he tells her to cling to him and let it all out. His line delivery is as fictitious and half-hearted as a love note from Otter Stratton on Sadie Hawkins' Day. Barnabas lunges in to bite her, and my concern and sympathy are challenged as I ponder her almost athletic lack of awareness. Of course, I'll inevitably side with the person getting her throat ripped out, but it won't stop me from wondering why she's practically painting a landing strip on her neck. Vicky, you have a generation of young people idolizing you. Today, the discussion isn't even a metaphor. No, she's not asking for it. No one is. So what is the message that we're supposed to take away from a dangerous conversation like this? For a person constantly asking questions about everything and never understanding what she hears, Vicky is the picture of unawareness. Evil is evil. An attack is an attack, and awareness is power. Ironically, that her would-be attacker Barnabas is frequently even less aware than Vicky. However, if anyone on a soap paid attention at all, the stories would last 10 minutes. But that's the point. The more the characters lack focus, the more we learn its value. David is the most aware character on the show, and in this episode he learns the most he ever will in one night. Pity it's from inside a coffin. That part of the discussion is too much metaphor to ignore. Episode 351. When Barnabas bites Carolyn, will they learn that true love is relative? Carolyn, Nancy Barrett. Barnabas, having bitten Carolyn and regained his middle-aged youth, finds that his niece is a ready and willing assistant. He alludes to granting her external life in exchange for her loyalty. But we sense the beginning of her mixed feelings as he orders her to secure the love of Victoria Winters for him. As she goes to Collingwood to begin, Barnabas entertains Julia's desire to stay on. Even if he is refusing her injections, she may be a servant, he says for now. There is so many trigger warnings that I need to put on this. You might as well stop reading now and find a Bill Keane anthology to set out the next few paragraphs. Seriously, Dark Shadows hovers over semblance of realism because of it touched the surface. The show would enter into real realm of ugly, taboo, and thus become unwatchable. Yes, all horror deals with some echelon at the taboo. That's why it's horror. But it's a safe taboo. It's either a treat we know can't really exist, or a set of coincidences so ludicrous as to be just as safe. Yeah, sure, it's a metaphor. But no one's really worried about being stuffed in a wicker man. Similar if we look at the moments of Dark Shadows that are actually scary. And I'm thinking of the kids being replicated in the dollhouse much later on the show. They are always written off as nightmares, even by me. And nightmares aren't real. And we have to do is remind ourselves of that. And the spell is broken. There is another realm of horror that may not even be scary, but it reads as quite real. Standard horror comes up and says, "Look, here's a thing that could never happen." But what if it did? Cue Count Floyd. Oh, scary. Yeah, kind of removes the glamour when you tear off the schmut. The more ratified strata of horror can't happen that often or sustain itself for very long. No one would watch after an episode or two. This episode slides into that nuanced world of no. It traps itself up in an immune and impish charm. Jealousy and Cinderella wish fulfillment, so we don't notice nor object. We get distracted by the fact that Vicky is the real focus, and so we skim around what almost happens. And what almost happens is that Barnabas and Carolyn make a really functional couple. Yeah, just writing that makes me want to take a bath. So yes, incest, that's bad enough. It's just, one of those things that primarily revolting. I have the luxury of writing about this with no proximate female relatives in my life. a luxury because I can speculate without it being, well, as creepy. Incest has to have some kind of dark appeal. Hello, V.C. Andrews, and if it didn't, such a wealth of the laws in Exodus would be about anything else. Fortunately, stories including incest almost inevitably involve force and negation of will. And this does too, but sometimes there's a ghost image of truth that seeps in through the frames, and there's one here. Very clearly, it brings out the dark pleasure in the characters and viewers. The dimension that makes the episode safe is the element of mind control under which Barnabas holds Carolyn. He's a blood-hungry heavy. What can you expect? She's under his spell, so follow it the same way. But the impression I get is that Carolyn unethically wants this relationship. Yes, Barnabas has power. Maybe the power doesn't really matter, but at last Carolyn has the power she's always wanted. At Colin, she has the secrets. She has the big one right up front and is promised more to follow. Secrets are the primary currency in her era of growing up in the house. This and a sexual fixation on nada and vaguely father figures, urban, available, safe. And now, delivering in a big way. It's not the mind control. It's not that the mind control has clouded her judgment, It seems more as if it has erased the social arguments that have held back this dynastic union. There is something disturbingly right about this couple. It comes across in the spirit of dreamy and zen, ease and comfort, and which Jonathan Frid and Nancy Baird slip into this forbidden inevitability. Barnabas already lurks in the folds of transgression. We just spend most of the show ignoring it. Here he not only steps into the light, but does so proudly and draws in Carolyn, who has just as little regret. She seems to be beyond even the need to discover that there was nothing to be afraid of. Keep in mind, I'm describing, not endorsing, the fact that I feel compelled to remind you of that is a testament to the danger in which the show is trading from the first time she calls Roger dreamy and he calls her kitten. This element has effervesced around the series, but we never take it seriously. And Dark Shadows has two realms of characters. Gods destined to live unscathed by the mere threats and everyone else. Aristocrats and civilians. Carolyn was a beautiful piece of set dressing up to now. She was there to get upset about what was happening to everyone, but that was it. She seemed safe. Bad things happened to the brunettes in this universe, but not Carolyn. Those are the rules. But the rules just broke, and the manner of it with Barnabas so unspeakable. Old when he attacks just underlines the horrific disparity that satisfies both of them. In fact, it seems to be the blood of a relative that really hits the spot. Just as she's stated afterwards, Barnabas is not only revived, but is practically smoking a cool, toasty cigarette of satisfaction. He's at his most blissful as he passively aggressively roasts Julia, who suddenly lost too much ground to even feel jealousy. Because frankly, she's been a bully. She's been an envious and mean-spirited bully just because she's doing it to a monster who's equally vindictive. It doesn't matter she's chosen to slowly torment Barnabas, and now at last, as he the temporary satisfaction of a true friend to help him strike right back. If only by implication, the class envy is rattling the lid at a full boil. It's clear that it took and will take a beautiful, cool blonde aristocrat to really do the job that Julia only apes. Not only that, a Collins, not Julia. No Julia, not even the taboo against incest will give you a fighting chance. You thought you could rewrite the rules of age, class, social expectation, and nature by inserting yourself into the realm. Julia is minimized, and yet it's not performed as an attack. It isn't torture, it's just humiliation. Suggestion that you are, at best, temporarily adequate. Oddly, it's exactly the sort of feminine punishment that Carolyn might have suggested. So who's feeding off whom between Barnabas and Carolyn? It's a slice of truth and observation so forbidding in its inevitably that the show cannot remain around to see what actually happens. It skips town to 1795, like a grind show exhibitable the morning after the circus tent comes down. Dark Shadows has too much make-believe on the agenda to speak such truths with any regularity. But it would be dishonest to not make us stop and think, what if? Only for a moment anything more too much. Even at Collinwood. Episode 354. When Barnabas learns that Julia is leading towards of his bedroom while he asleep, while the doctor finally be out for good, Julia, Dr. Hoffman. As Barnabas firms up his alliance with his new assistant and spy, Carolyn, Julia uses her powers of hypnosis to reveal the truth of the dark side to Victoria. When Barnabas discovers this, predictably, he vows revenge. One of the most satisfying things in watching Dark Shadows is seeing characters develop on an arc. Some of the arcs are fairly brief, like Quentin, Jeb, or Adam. Some of them are wildly macroscopic, like the one Barnabas follows, usually when a character finishes their arc. They've gone from bad to good. Barnabas is an exception to this. He goes from good, if naive and a little selfish, to evil in the name of self-preservation, with some extremely fuzzy lines in there, and then back to a good that is rigorously and heartbreakingly tested again and again, helping him along the path as a character who has an arc of her own, Julia Hoffman. Her arc is neither endless nor brief, but it ends long, long before we say goodbye to her. Although I am a huge fan of both Grayson Hall and Julia Hoffman, I can also acknowledge that many people are not. They have issues with her acting style, and they have issues with her character. In both cases, it's arguably understandable, especially in the case of the character in her own way. For the first leg of the journey on the show, Julia Hoffman may be the most interesting and insidious villain. She is quietly and single-mindedly determined, realistic in her humanity, and as carefree in the viciously destructive in the use of her abilities, as is Angelique. Diabolically, Julia manages to make herself indispensable to Barnabas. Despite all of this, and at the heart of the matter, the beauty of the character evil lies in her potential for good. Not only is she sensational, vital again and again, but she has the capacity of being a far greater force for help. Okay. Help than she is for harm. So you kind of have to keep her around. If you watch the entire series, it becomes easy to forget how wicked she can be before she accepts that it's better to have a distracted Barnabas, unable to reciprocate her affections, than no Barnabas at all. In the early days, the other greatest threat to Barnabas is probably Barnabas himself, with a little help from Dave Woodard. But since she is humbled by the fact that someone else curses him, and once the greater threats of Nicholas Blair and Angelique enter the 20th century, love takes over in an entirely different way, and she shapes up. In the process, Julia mirrors Barnabas in a department of unrequested affection. In fact, because of her maturity, allows her to accept the fact that he is not a puppet to be manipulated into loving her. She surprises Barnabas and Angelique, but both of whom continue to chase lovers who are by and large never going to be interested in them. It is a painful, subtle, gradual, and quiet triumph for Julia. And by comparison, Barnabas and Angelique seem all the more melancholy and lost. We appreciate the severity of their challenge and feel deeply for their inability to get over it, because, by example, Julia could, but when she's bad, she's really bad. And whether it's trying to poison Barnabas or poison Victoria, mind against him in the ugliest fashion, her ruthlessness is neither bondless for a character who is somewhat thanks to the arguably unflattering haircut that she sports throughout most of the show. One of the most spiritually masculine on the series, her penchant for manipulation and character assassination makes her also one of the most feminine. By comparison, Angelique is actually extremely masculine. She thinks in terms of the power structure, king of the mountain, and gaining authority through a direct attack and visceral revenge. It does not take Julia long to know that she never even stands a chance in the battle for Barnabas. So the best she can do is stick around, and if not, just poison his entire social world. Long before, in the storytelling at least, Angelique ever made his life miserable by revealing his secret to a lover, Julia begins infecting Victoria's mind and heart with the ugly truth. But whereas Angelique used abilities that were patiently naughty from the start, Julia destroys using powers designed for healing. In other words, she's got a lot of explaining to do. And she spends the next several years doing just that. We spend so much time watching Barnabas atone that it's easy to ignore the fact Julia has her fair share of atonement to accomplish. Also, In this episode, we get to see what her and some of her delicious worst partially driven by the fact that Barnabas now has a far more compliant and capable assistant. For now, in the world of Barnabas Collins, it is a frequently just for now. One of the show's great and quiet ironies is that he will eventually go. From being the man surrounded by untrustworthiness assistants to being assisted by those who often mistrust him. But for now, Barnabas has to sleep sometime, and Julian knows it, and Barnabas knows it that Julian knows it, and she knows that he knows it, and she knows it, and he knows it, that she knows it, that he knows it. That's very good. So, this is where I'm going to stop, guys. I'm at, as you can see, episode 364. That's where I'm going to stop for now. I will pick up tomorrow night. I hope you guys enjoyed this read along. I'm really enjoying this book. Obviously, link will always be in the description box of where you could pick up the Dark Shadows Daybook, written by Patrick McCray, artwork by Wallace McBride. Guys, great job. I'm enjoying this book. I told that to Patrick. It's amazing. You guys are awesome. Really good stuff.